There you go. Yeah, go. Let's go.
Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen, and congratulations again for being parts of this esteemed event. But of course, with all of the speeches we need to make, we also need to get down to what people call the brass tacks. There's conversations to be had about the world ahead of many of the economies on the African continent and beyond in 2023. My name is Tolulokwe Adeleru Balogun. I'm head of programs for News Central Africa, News Central TV. We are a pan-African television station based here in Lagos, Nigeria. You can find us on DSTV channel 422 as well as Star Times channel 274. And if you want to know what's happening with the African continent, we're your destination for politics, business, sports, everything. All of it's right there. And of course,
and I am Michael. I'm the head of research at Hawalti and have been an editorial collaborator with City Productions for many, many years. Delighted to be here as well.
So we'll introduce our panelists and get straight to the conversation we'll be having this evening. First up to join us on the podium, we have Edward Nanaya Koreteng. Please a round of applause for him. Edward is a lawyer and investment banker with over 22 years experience in corporate and public finance, oil and gas, and financial market dealings. He's also currently the CEO of the Minerals Income Investment Fund, which is Ghana's sovereign minerals fund. Please, once again, a round of applause as he makes his way to the stage.
Next, we have Peter Anagbe. Peter is head of the alternative fuel projects at Dangote Cement. Prior to joining Dangote, Peter worked for Lafarge Cement and has, over the years, developed a passion for people development, promoting alternative energy sources, and managing sustainable operations. A round of applause for Peter.
Now, next up to join the stage is Dipankar Rustagi. Dipankar is an avid entrepreneur who has lived and worked in Nigeria for the past 25 years. He is the founder and CEO of Nigeria's foremost B2B e-commerce platform, OmniBiz. Please a round of applause for him. I feel like I maybe should have done that in Pidgin, because with 25 years in Nigeria, I'm very sure you've got it.
And last but not least, we have George Thorpe, who's managing director at Mag Protein Nigeria. George has years of experience in sales, credit risk, and supply chain finance. He is carrying out his vision for sustainable food production as the managing director of West Africa's first industrial-scale insect production business. How about that? Well, George, you are most welcome on stage.
All right, so we'll get started straight into the conversation.
We'll wait for Josh to get here and then we'll just jump right in. Thank you very much. So Tolu and I are both delighted to have you gentlemen here with us tonight. Will be, I think, for those of you who were with us last year, I think the key focus was on resilience, and we're going to try to move the conversation from resilience to growth, especially focusing on how we can leverage on sustainable development, commodities and trade to unlock further growth potential in Nigeria and across the rest of the region. I want to start with you, Mr. Koreteng. You are our international guest. You are most welcome here in Nigeria and in Lagos. I want to start with you because when you look at the outlook for 2023, most of the fastest growing economies on the continent have commodities to thank for. The top 10 are very much driven by oil, by gas, by mining and by minerals. Tell us the Ghana story on this, because as we understand, Ghana's economy was able to beat expectations last year because of the performance of its mining sector. So for people not familiar with the Minerals Income Investment Fund, tell us more about it and give us your take on the outlook for commodities, West African commodities in particular, and which ones are you particularly bullish about?
Thank you very much. And I'm pleased to be back in Lagos. Lagos used to be my second home when I was in the banking sector. So to my Ghanaian colleagues, I would say, welcome to my home. I'll start by giving you a bit of a background on what MIF is, or the Minerals Income Investment Fund is. We are basically a sovereign wealth fund, specialty sovereign wealth fund, concentrating on the mineral sector. So what we do are basically two things. We manage the government of Ghana's equity interest in all mining companies. So what government does in Ghana is that for every mining entity, especially the foreign entities, government automatically has a carried interest of 10%. So that is managed by us. And then for for the mining companies, every single mineral, be it salt, sand, yes, sand is a mineral. I keep making that argument with some students of mine, but yes, sand is a mineral. And so all minerals, which are about 17 in Ghana, pay royalties. The only mineral that does not pay royalties to MIF is the bauxite. It's bauxite. Bauxite, we don't take mineral royalties from bauxite because the government of Ghana is undertaking what we call the Aluminium Development Plan, where we are seeing bauxite as separate and building a full integrated aluminium industry. So they don't pay royalties to us. So we manage the dividend. We get all the royalties, which is an average of about, let's say, $195 million every year. And then we reinvest these royalties and the dividend into the mining sector with a very small space for alternative investments. So MIF was set up not too long ago. It was set up by statute. We've been operating really much in the past just about 3 years. But so far, we've been able to move our assets under management within the last 12 months to about $375 million. And by the end of this year, our assets under management should hit $500 million. And then in 2 years' time, we should hit $1 billion. So we're moving quite aggressively in getting the only publicly mineral sovereign wealth fund in Africa moving quite well. In terms of as regards your second question, what minerals are we bullish about? So for us in Ghana or under Minerals Income Investment Fund, we're basically looking at 4 main minerals right now. In terms of outlook, we're extremely bullish about the commodities. We're extremely bullish about gold, especially. Well, Ghana is #1 gold producer in Africa, as you're aware, and somewhere around #6 in the world. But gold for us, for reasons where my governor actually did mention the geopolitical anxieties and tensions that's going on right now. We all know the Ukraine-Russia war, and then the impact is having as regards uncertainty, economic uncertainty. So we are seeing gold as safe haven. We're also seeing gold being purchased in record numbers by central banks. I think for the past 20, 30 years, there's the highest spate of gold purchased by central banks in the world. Are quite obvious, and I believe we all agree with me. At the end of the day, we have to hedge against inflation. We have to ensure that we also have our currencies are well protected against the devaluation caused by a lot of hedge funds moving into the dollar index. So gold, in our view, is one mineral that we see as still going to go up. We anticipate that we predicted last year that we'll have gold being $2,000 per ounce, and that has happened. We believe that this will be sustained. We believe that gold will go higher than 2,000 so far as the issues around the world is ongoing. The second mineral that we really want to look at is salt, and that will surprise many people here. Salt has 14,000 uses. I believe it has more than 14,000 uses. But you can't drive industrialization without industrial salt. So from oil and gas, from food processing, from pharmaceuticals, from food preservation, from road construction, you need salt. Caustic soda, you need salt. Ghana sits on what is, not arguably, it's a fact, sits on what has the potential to be sub-Saharan Africa's biggest salt pan. Walvis Bay of Namibia, which is the biggest in sub-Saharan Africa, is 16,700 acres. The Adar Songo salt is 41,000 acres. That's more than twice the Walvis Bay. but this is now going through the development phases. We've actually been having conversations. I mean, the company that is managing that lease has actually been having conversations with the Dangote Group, having conversations with a number of the Nigerian oil companies, because salt, industrial salt, is actually quite important for these sectors. So there's a sector that, there's a mineral that we're really looking at. And then the other mineral is lithium. As you may all be aware, lithium has been discovered in economic quantities in Ghana. What we're doing as MIF and as a country is to look at the beneficiation by looking at the entire value delivery process or value chain. So we're looking at leveraging the lithium find on supporting Ghana's automobile development plan. What Ghana is doing is giving incentives for the major car manufacturers to set up manufacturing or assembly plants in Ghana. At the moment, we have 6, including a local one that is fully set up in Ghana. We know that the evolution will come where these car companies or vehicle companies will start looking at EVs. The Toyotas are already starting looking at EVs. So we want to leverage on the lithium and get processing, and not just export the lithium condensate, but get processing going for these companies to leverage on the lithium resource, for us to look at the batteries, EV batteries as well, for us to connect it to manganese, which we have in abundance. Ghana is actually one of the world's largest producers of manganese. There's a connect between the manganese and lithium for you to actually have battery iron. So we're looking at this mineral as well. Then the last one is bauxite, for obvious reasons, which I've mentioned. So these 4 minerals are what Ghana is really looking at, and that's what we want to extend and look at other markets, especially with regards to the processing. Yes, hopefully we'll look at collaborations with the companies in Nigeria and others in West Africa. So yes, we are bullish, but very much so on these 4 minerals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as we continue to look ahead, I think it's an opportune time to talk to those who are leading some of Nigeria's SMEs, Mr. Thorpe and Mr. Rustagi. We know that at the end of the day, in about just a month, Nigeria is going to get a new administration, the swearing in of a new president. So I want to talk about expectations now. What are some of the key expectations that you have as Nigerian SMEs in terms of the reforms that would be required to support market activity, to exactly look at the economy you want that will build the companies that you see taking over the continent and, of course, reaching further out into the world as well? Mr. Thorpe, let me start with you.
Thank you very much. I stand on existing protocols. I think it's an interesting question you ask. For us, as a background at Mag Protein, we produce alternative proteins for aqua feed and organic fertilizer for crop production. So these are sort of 2 critical ingredients for the food and feed value chain, and have huge potential for stabilizing food prices once you get the model right. Now, if we look at our SME and we ask what are the sort of critical reforms that really interest us, I would say they fall around sort of 3 to 4 areas. The first is sort of stable electricity grid supply. I calculate that in my business that could give us 30% cost savings, because we run a climate controlled operation today where we require temperature, humidity, and airflow to stay stable for 24 hours in a day. So we sort of are shuttling between grid and sort of diesel generators, and that can be quite expensive. But we are aware that the existing power infrastructure here, we're seeing that the FG has partnered with Siemens, and with the development of our democracy, we're seeing that there's a stable sort of transition and sort of stable focus on, solving problems. And we believe that the new administration will come in and sort of take on that partnership and continue to build on what has been laid in the, on the ground. For me, the second is logistics. I heard the Deputy Governor talk about rail. I don't know if you've heard, but some people joke that the cost of transportation from China to Lagos is equal to that of Lagos to Kano. And if you're running a business and you're sort of unfortunate that you have to import goods from China and then ship them all the way to Kano to process, you can imagine that's going to have a huge impact on your cost of production. I think that rail has a really, really big role to play to solve this problem. Moving bulk cargo like organic fertilizer and protein products to farmers in Kano, in Jigawa, it can only be done by rail. Road transportation today, I think it's about 1.8 million naira to ship goods from here to Kano. That's too expensive for SME businesses. The third one, I think, is really capital to growth, for growth. As a SME, we agree that 90% of the talent that we have in Nigeria is employed by SMEs. And many SMEs are keen for growth. The opportunity is so palpable for us. But what's really sort of restricting that growth is access to the right kind of capital and the right kind of capital mix to ensure that these sort of dreams and visions that we have come at the right price for the customer and for the value chain partners. I think this is a big opportunity for the new administration to come in to say, okay, let's drive growth and drive talent and drive core competency in various spaces, and let's pick SMEs that we know can really sort of, improve the value chains that they're in. The last one is, I think, clear to some of us, the FX sort of price strategy. We've seen a lot of moves by the current administration to solve the FX problem, but I think that we probably need to have just one price point, and there needs to be a wider focus on more sort of exports to bring in FX into the country. We've seen also that there's a big focus on non-oil exports for the economy, and I think that has a lot of potential to sort of improve the cost of production for many manufacturers who currently import material from other countries and are looking to have a system that is predictable. So I think those 4 areas, if there's a reform in those 4 areas, we should see significant development in Nigeria.
Good evening, everyone. I'm amazed to sit in front of such fine audience and share my views. I run a very simple business. It's called Omni Retail. This business is responsible to ensure that there is enough food, beverage, home care products, and personal care products in your house. So when you are staying in Ota and you step out to the nearest supermarket and you want to buy Omo, or you want to buy Indomie, or you want to buy any of the other products, those products should be available at the retailer. We ensure we connect these retailers to the manufacturers, to the brands, so they have the sources available to buy these products and keep it available for everyone, every individual, to make access for every individual across the nation. In the last 2 years, the resilience has been tested in various ways. We have seen COVID, we have seen increases in fuel prices, we have seen increases in prices of various consumer products, and still we have been resilient. We have brought in innovation. So to improve the logistic scenario, there have been various startups that have created opportunity, that have connected different parts of B2B businesses to bridge the gap. And I think that is super strong. In terms of what we and similar businesses like ours expect from the new government, would be a 3-fold thing. Number 1 would be improvement in the infrastructure so logistics can become easy. I totally understand, like Deputy Governor mentioned, that their population in Lagos is so high, so getting logistics gets difficult. But that becomes a hindrance in moving goods for these last mile retailers, for every business owner. And these small business owners don't have the capacity, don't have the capital required to procure and keep goods for large durations. So they are actually working between 2 to 3 days capital. So improving the infrastructure and logistics is going to help the small businesses go a long way. In these tough times, we realize how important logistics is to have stable prices of fuel and how important it is to have continuity. The second part would be in terms of price stability. We all have seen the consumer goods prices have increased, but the official rate of Naira has not increased. So having stable pricing for consumer goods, specifically attending to the mass market, would be essential. Third, and a very important point, is having capital available for small businesses. Working capital loans for these businesses to grow themselves would be instrumental in scaling these businesses, in supporting the economies around these businesses to scale forward. I think these 3 points would go a long way to help small businesses scale. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm still coming straight back to you now, because when we were here last year, the conversations were around regionalization, the intra-African trade, where we could find ourselves even with the African Free Continental Trade Area Agreement and all of that. And we're a few years into that now, but there just doesn't seem to be as much movement as many people would have hoped. But at the long run, we're looking at unlocking growth on the continent. So in terms of what OmniBiz is doing, your experience in that sector as well, give us your take on growth when it comes to supply chains in places like Nigeria and Ghana, especially when it comes to the trends that you see possibly driving growth ahead of us. We're looking at the future ahead. What are those trends that we should take notice of that businesses can plug into so they're there when the people meet them, when the need and the demand also meets them there as well?
Thank you. Like I mentioned, supply chain seems like a very simple concept, but it is the backbone for the growth of every business. Supply chain goes in logistics, supply chain goes through warehousing, supply chain goes through putting together the inventory and availability of goods. This, in the last 2 years, has got digitized. In the last 2 years, we have seen various number of startups who have played different roles in terms of bringing agriculture, agri-produce farmers online, who have brought their supply chain, their inventory, their shipment of goods, aggregation of demand onto a single platform. We have seen chemical platforms, platforms which are bringing chemical suppliers from different parts together. We have seen FMCG platforms like ourselves, where it becomes easy and instrumental for companies to simplify the supply chain. I believe for intra-border trade to happen, I believe for trade to scale between states, it is important for the digitization of supply chain to happen. This digitization gives us more visibility in terms of what inventory is available, where there is excess of stock, where there are stockouts, where there is lack of logistics available, and where there is overabundance of all logistics available. Simplifying this makes it even and makes it cleaner for people to have logistics across the chain. This digitization of supply chain would take us into the next level, especially we all know there are challenges in terms of the supply chain infrastructure, and instead of expecting great amount of investment immediately, it would be amazing if there are various digitization aspects taken care in supply chain, helping the investments to find the channel. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think I want to bounce back on one thing that was just mentioned about fuel prices. And obviously, if you want to industrialize, you're going to need a whole lot of energy and electricity. In fact, even I think Mr. Korenteng, once you start building up that bauxite and aluminium value chain in Ghana, you're going to need a lot of gas and electricity. And so I want to take the opportunity of having one of the largest industrial conglomerates on the panel to ask Peter, how does Dangote Cement make it work? So how does the increase of fuel prices has impacted the business over the past 2 years? And how do you now secure your energy in a way that is affordable and sustainable?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. Good evening, all. At
Dangote, and of course, as mentioned by Tom in his opening notes and rightly underscored by Dr. Adenike, the Russian-Ukraine war, has driven prices of energy, northwards, and this has greatly, impacted on the chain regarding availability of energy and the prices. Just to bring it home, if we look at the production of cement, between 30 to 40% of the cost that goes into a bag of cement comes from energy, electrical energy, and thermal energy. So at Dangote, of course, we have businesses across Pan-Africa and in Nigeria, and the impact, on all our operations is really felt thanks to the world being a global village, But the way we react, varies from country to country. If I take Ethiopia, we have a crisis in Ethiopia. Prices of fuel driven up. We have collaboration with the government to see how we can use waste to replace some percentage of the energy that we use. I go to Zambia. We have waste that is coming from coal, called fly ash. We find a way of using this fly ash as an alternative energy. I go to Senegal. In Senegal, we have quite a significant amount of agricultural wastes, peanut shell. We have some waste grasses. We have sawdust. We find a way of using this as alternative energy. And I come home to Nigeria. So in Nigeria, we have vast agricultural and arable land. We have sort of researched and engineered how to use palm kernel shell waste as fuel. We also use rice husk, which is a waste from the agribusiness. We are looking at using other waste like corn hobs, various kind of waste. We are also looking at commercial and industrial waste, that is of taking waste from other companies. And of course, I'm sure down the line we'll have some discussion engagements with some of our colleagues here to see what kind of waste they generate, from their industries. Rather than disposing them, we can sort of use this waste as an alternative fuel. And we have set up a roadmap in the company to, down the road, in 5 years' time, replace 25% of the energy that we use in making cement. 25% of the energy that we use in making cement. This is our plan. The company and management, and of course the entire staff of Dangote is committed to achieving this feat. We are on the right track, and we have KPIs that we have set, and we monitor. Now, just coming to the advantage of this, it is, of course, we have the energy crisis. This is the situation we find ourselves. This is the ingenuity that we have come up with. And it has also, we find out that it is creating, jobs for people. You can imagine sourcing a ton of palm kernel shell. You have about 10 people involved in doing that. This is creating jobs, for people. And we call this waste. This waste could have gone to the landfill. For 2022, we co-processed about 150,000 tons of waste. Bringing it home, this is an equivalent of 4,000 trucks of cement. 4,000 trucks. This is the waste that has been diverted from. So we have the energy crisis. We try to replace percentage of the heat that we use in making cement, but it's sort of like a two-edged sword. We also clean the environment. Energy crisis is bringing up green cement. So this is what we do in Dangote. And of course, just to give a purview of what we are looking at in the future, we're also looking at using waste-derived fuel as alternative energy. That means waste derived from garbages. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have, I know that we have experts of the circular economy in the room, and I'm sure they've been paying close attention. I think we have two key topics just before we can wrap up, and I just want to go back to the conversation on the supply chains. I think that was a key topic that we talked about last year. And so, Mr. Korenteng, when we speak about the growth of the mining sector in Ghana and the positioning of Ghana as the new regional hub for mining and minerals on the continent, what can regional integration mean for that value chain that you're trying to build? Are you actually thinking about potential integration you can have with countries like Nigeria, Benin, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, or is it something that remains on paper but that hasn't really translated into concrete actions yet?
Wow, that's a loaded and heavy question, and a good one. So you're absolutely right. For our strategy in Ghana, especially in the mining space, in fact, across the commodity space, we have a policy that is retracking away from export of the raw material. So allow me to divert to cocoa, for example. We used to just, I think, process 10% of our cocoa, just about 10%. The rest will find its way in Switzerland, Belgium, comes back to us as chocolate, and we consume, and and we lose out on a multi-billion-dollar market, and that's a shame. So along those lines, which has been translated into or transferred into the mining sector, the government of Ghana came up with a policy that we need to constantly refine these commodities. So cocoa, for example, we now process about 44% of our cocoa. We have Ghanaian cocoa companies, private companies, that have acquired factories in places like Germany and the United States. And these are Ghanaian private companies. And these are based on the policies that were put across by the government. In the mining sector, we're looking at gold, for example. MIF, and that's Minerals Income Investment Fund, is looking at how it can support the jewelry sector. For us, mining gold, #1 gold producer, we find our women going all the way to Dubai, bringing in the gold, fine ornaments that are gold exported from Ghana. So we're looking at how we get these gold refineries set up. We're looking at how we negotiate and have possible LBMA refineries set up in Ghana. In Africa, we only have one LBMA refinery, and that's the Rand refinery in South Africa. And then we're looking at our policy on lithium, for example. Lithium, we consider lithium as a mineral of strategic and security interest for obvious reasons. So we're looking at these critical minerals, having a policy around these critical minerals. The policy that is being advocated by my organization is that we should at least refine 50% of any of these critical minerals that are found in Ghana. So for lithium, for example, that is what we want to do. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking at the bauxite, looking at our integrated aluminum plan, which is to process our bauxite in-house, and looking at how we use the gas to support with power. And then we're looking at how we also, I've already talked about lithium, but we're also looking at how we're able to get into cross-border arrangements. So I'm sure most of you may have heard that Zimbabwe and Zambia are looking at a cross-border agreement on how it deals with these critical minerals. Togo, for example, has a lot of phosphate. Ghana does not have phosphate, but phosphate is regarded as a critical mineral. how do we get, how do we collaborate with Togo on this? You know, we have the know-how, we have the financial backbone to get these things running. So discussions have started with some financiers on how we get these things being done together. I'm sure you're also aware of the agreement between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire on cocoa pricing, which shook the world. You know, the Western world were actually not too pleased with that, but we control almost 70% of the world's cocoa. Nigeria used to be a top cocoa producer until we flirted. I say we because now I'm Nigerian. We flirted with the Dutch disease when we found oil. And that brought our production of cocoa. But I know that there are policies that are bringing these things back up. Can you imagine the kind of power that Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Nigeria will have if we're able to look at the entire value delivery process of cocoa? You know, we will control the system. And I think that is what we have to look at. Like I tell my team at MIF, ambition is not a dirty word. You know, you've had people set up companies worldwide that have controlled. And that's why I'm so pleased to see Dangote, for example. Because these are some of the beacons that we should look at, especially when it comes to cross-border cooperation. So for us, when it comes to the, especially with AFTA, Africa Free Trade, I see two things. I see cooperation and I see markets. I see markets and I'm thinking, why don't we process our minerals and look at the West African market? Why don't we make Ghana the center of EV batteries based on the lithium and see how we can cooperate with Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, or Nigeria that have actually have lithium resource that is not yet developed, you know, and see how we can project ourselves on the globe. Chile and Mexico, on the past 6 months, have nationalized their lithium resources. The United States and Germany have put in pure policies that are backed by billions to look for rare earth and lithium to support their EV markets. Germany, I think yesterday announced that they're putting $2 billion, or 2 billion euros to look for lithium, and these announcements or these policies for us as West Africans or Africans should give us an inkling of where the world or what direction the world is going. And we should know and understand the kind of leverage we have with these resources. We can't do anything if we don't cooperate. And so for me, when it comes to AFTA, when it comes to these things, it is all about cooperation. That is what has to do with the financing. That's something that we don't have. I mean, when I say we don't have, we all know what I'm talking about. Ghana is even going to the IMF. But we have set up institutions like MIF that can go into risk participations, that can go into corporations, that can go into joint or co-investment with other such institutions in other African countries to look at how we can support these projects. Why are we not pushing our regional bosses, the regional stock exchanges? Why can't Asante Gold, for which MIF invested in, not been listed in Nigeria or Cote d'Ivoire or even on the regional board? These are the things that MIF is trying to do, and these are things that we are confident from our successes so far in Ghana that we can do. And this is part of the reasons why we even came here, to have these dialogues, have conversations, and see how we can get into these corporations with these policies that have been designed not just for markets, but also for cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we followed the conversation with Ivory Coast and Ghana, holding everybody, literally, by a word I can't use on stage. And we saw the power of that. And as you said, cooperation remains one of the things that we can't get right when it comes to it. But I also know that Mr. Peter also mentioned ingenuity earlier. And then I've heard somebody mention sustainability as well. Because at the end of the day, these are not just solutions for today. They must be the solutions for tomorrow and for future generations. So, Mr. Thorpe, I want to come to you because I don't think people really have gotten the weight of what you do in the industry you're doing it on. We've done special reports on how many billions of people around the world actually use insects as a food source. And I know in certain parts of Africa as well, you can find certain insects as part of a delicacy, as part of the cuisine. But you're doing much more than that. And I want us to look now at the sustainability of all of this in the area that's very central to your activities. What kind of appetite are you seeing from the markets, even consumers? This is we might say it starts off as a niche market, but you have customers. You probably have millions of customers right now across the continent. You're talking about it in terms of the agro value chain, but we haven't even taken it into the pure food consumable value chain as well. So what does this tell us about the kind of business models that SMEs should adopt? What is the appetite you're seeing from consumers of your products?
This is another weighty question. Well, first and foremost, we don't have any customers that eat insects, human beings, first and foremost. What is sustainability? I think that sustainability can be defined as our preservation of natural capital such that we are leaving resources for people in the future to access without wasting what we have today. If you break that definition down, it sounds like we have an ethical responsibility for the future, and it also sounds that like we have to be sort of very careful with what we have and how we use what we have. At Mag Protein, when we started, we didn't start to be a sustainable business. I must confess, we started because my business partner thought, this is a great way to feed fish, so let's, try it. But we soon realized that if we want to make this really good business, we need to take advantage of the biomass that is generated by food and beverage businesses in Nigeria. Today, we are partnered with beverage companies, and we take some liquid sort of waste byproducts from them, which we use in the diets for the insects. We farm, like I said before, an insect called a black soldier fly. It's a non-pest fly. And if you know about insects, there are two types of insects in the world. We have pollinators, so like bees, and bees give honey. And then we have bioconverters, like black soldier fly. What they do is that every bit of organic material that falls on the forest floor, the bioconverters will eat it up and convert it into biomass, which is their biomass, and waste, which is organic fertilizer. And we've taken that sort of natural process and converted it into a business. Today, we are probably one of the largest doing that in Nigeria. And I can tell you that the last 5 years have been daunting, but there's a lot of potential for the future. Now, who are the customers? We have fish farmers, and we have crop farmers. We're doing a trial now with the Center for Dryland Agriculture, Bayero University. And we found out that our organic fertilizer is probably one of the best organic fertilizers ever. Thank you. Thank you. It's excellent for low feeder crop, vegetables, tomatoes, peppers, but it's also pretty good for sort of high feeder crops like maize, So it sort of seems like Mag Protein as a company has the potential to be able to produce fertilizer that can grow crop and then protein that can be used to feed animals. And if we look at those two sort of verticals, those are the foundations for the food chain here. In Nigeria, about 70 to 80% of the protein used for feed is imported. That is a big problem. And I think that when we talk about the capital to scale, we need to realize that innovation is really a resource allocation activity. And we need to start thinking about how we can solve that 70 to 80% import problem today. Are we going to solve it by growing soybeans in Jigawa? Maybe not. Why I say so is that we are seeing in the Amazon today in Brazil that there's a lot of concern around biodiversity risk and how you're seeing, 4 or 5 football fields every day sort of destroyed to create farm sort of space for these crops. So if we took that approach, it means we're basically reinventing the wheel in the wrong direction, and it's not going to help us. So what's the approach that we could take? If I use an example, Dangote Foods, for example, produce, let's say, feed, and they also generate a lot of biomass in their operation, like we've heard Mr. Peter say. And imagine if some of that biomass is interesting for us. We could take all the biomass that they generate in one factory, use it as feed for the insects, and return to them every day all the protein that's required for that factory. So we can have 100% import substitution where the amino acids required for their feed operation are met locally. This sort of circular approach will be such that every time we go around the circle, we don't have to destroy natural capital. We actually allow natural capital to replenish. We just continue to utilize whatever waste biomass that's generated and give sort of alternative products that normally would be imported today. That really is the model that we are going to. But today, we are helping farmers replace 50% of the commercial feed that they use with high quality protein, and they get a 10 to 15% cost savings. In the future, it is our hope that we help feed businesses substitute imports, and we stabilize the cost of their feed production such that we could stabilize the cost of inputs from them, and we stabilize the price of the products we're giving them, such that they have a much wider scope for planning. It's very difficult to plan today in an FX environment that is very volatile. And if you're a feed manufacturer importing, like I said, 70% of your protein, that's actually going to make things very complex. But our solution, I think, allows these companies to stay plugging that solution for every feed business in Nigeria. That's our hope. We want to take the 70% import bill down to 0. That really is go big.
Thank you very much.
In the industry we operate in, either you go big or you don't exist. In FMCG, you cannot service a small segment. If you are manufacturing, you have to take the produce from Lagos to Sokoto to Maiduguri to various parts of Nigeria. And you have to build the right supply chain. You have to interact with different layers from manufacturers to distributors to retailers to logistics provider and seamlessly. So you have to build the infrastructure to grow. Today we service 65,000 retailers. We service 135 manufacturers, and we believe one day will come where from Lagos, from Nigeria, we would be able to service West Africa. So every manufacturer would be able to supply goods to distributors in various parts of West Africa, would be able to service retailers across the zone. So I think digitizing this trade would make us reach there. We want to go big.
All right, thank you very much.
For us in Dangote,
It's much bigger now. You're not going big, you're going bigger.
going big is a way of life. And for us, for every challenge, that comes to our way, in Africa and in a wider spectrum, the world, is to convert it to an opportunity and see how other businesses can learn from us, as pace setters, and also gain from it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, for a continent that has more than 50% of the world's mineral resources, the youngest population, growing financial sector, the world's biggest free trade zone, we have no choice but to grow big. The possibilities are infinite, and if you're looking at a $3 trillion market which is growing, almost every single mineral you can think of in the world. For a fund like us, which is African-centered, we have no choice but to grow big. But we can only grow big if we are actually going to arrangements, corporations, partnerships with like-minded funds and other countries. And that's how we can grow big together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So please, let's have a round of applause once again for our panelists. It's been a wonderful time hearing their experiences as businesses, growing businesses, and those who are making things happen on the continent. Michael?
Yes, thank you so much as well to the four of you. We look forward to the continuation of the program. I think we're almost done and we're all getting ready for drinks and food. So I'll leave it back to our wonderful hostess to take it from here. Thank you so much.